Hey y'all, and welcome to Culture Cult, where we are one podcast with 197 countries to explore stories and history from. I'm your host, Marie, and this week we are doing travel stories. So that's when you send in your best travel stories to be read aloud, and we hear from guests on their favorite travel stories also. So send in your favorite travel stories to our email, culturecultshow@gmail.com. And remember to comment, rate, and subscribe to the show. Cheers and enjoy. Hi, y'all. Welcome back to the show today. We are doing a travel episode, and we have a super special guest coming on. I'm so excited. Her name is Carol Springer. She's also another travel podcaster and the host of Where Next Travel Podcast. So she's going to be here to talk about her travels. And then the best part, since it's a travel story episode, she's going to tell one of her stories. Hi, Carol. Welcome on.
Hi, thanks, Marie. Really appreciate you having me. Well, I don't have one crazy travel story. So what I thought today to do is tell you about a couple smaller travel stories, one on each continent of the 4 continents that I've been on. So
I love that. I love that idea. And then I did want to talk briefly about your podcast, Where Next. You have a co-host, Kristen. Yeah. How did y'all get started on that?
yeah, so Kristen and I have been friends for a very long time, and we're both moms where kids are in high school, empty nesters, and we actually kind of lost touch. We both were in the Bay Area. And then I moved out to Colorado 16 years ago, and she started her own business. I have my own business. And I said, wow, I can't wait to go travel again once the kids are off to college. And I'm like, we should start a podcast. And she's like, yeah. So really the mission of our podcast is to interview people in our destinations of where we either want to slow travel to, spend a couple months, maybe work and live, the workcation, whatever, or maybe even expat to, once we're older. But it's interesting, after doing all this research, I don't think I want to expat. But that's what we want to learn. And so we've interviewed people from Singapore, Philippines, South Korea, Belize, Europe, and it's been really, really fun.
I like about your podcast is you get a very close perspective from people from the countries, and that it's so interesting, especially if you're like, well, I do kind of want to move somewhere probably, or slow travel, going somewhere for a longer time. And definitely your podcast is like classier, and just very educational, and it's so good. And I personally liked your episode on Africa because we're covering Zimbabwe this season. You definitely talk about Zimbabwe in the Africa episode, and it's just a completely different perspective from what I covered. So definitely at the end, again, I want to cover more about where's next. And then traveling, when did that get started for you? Did you always want it as a kid, or
no, I didn't get on an airplane until I was probably 16 or 17 years old.
Wow.
We camped around Minnesota.
I love camping.
That's where I grew. Yeah, I still love camping. Totally love it. And in Colorado, that's where I live now. It's like backcountry camping is amazing. I've been lucky not stuck in any storms like you said you were one like with your tent getting
Y'all's weather
over.
is crazy.
It's so crazy. And but this is the crazy thing. So there was no discussion where to go to school. You're going to the University of Minnesota, right? Unless you want to pay for it yourself, that's just how it goes. And so, and then my boyfriend at the time, he's like, oh, there's this thing called the National Student Exchange. And I just looked it up. It still exists, nse.org, National Student Exchange. So anyone that's listening that's in college or about to go to college, you should do this because I exchanged University of Minnesota, the coldest place in the States. I exchanged with the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I know. I had never even thought about going to Hawaii. I saw Hawaii on the Brady Bunch, and so that's I always thought of Hawaii as this little place and super far away. Why would I go there? I just want to go somewhere warm. This is never going to happen. It never even fathomed that you can make something happen. And that was my first thing in life where you can make a difference. I was always just I was the youngest of 5 kids and, just kind of did what everyone else did, just kind of following the path, and my path probably for my immigrant father from Poland is find a man, get married and have babies, and so I went to Hawaii and I'm like, oh my God, this is actually happening. We're here. And so for me to go to University of Hawaii, just for that 1 year, those are my friends for life. We all bonded, I had the dorm experience finally. And every day I was like, I can't believe this is true. Our dorm, you walk out and you're looking at, we couldn't see the ocean from there, but it's just the
So
mountain,
beautiful.
palm trees and the sun rising. And this is a dream. Difference, like rice for breakfast. Like, what is this place? So just learning about how people live differently, even though
I love
Hawaii
it.
is not a different country, they definitely
It
have a
is.
different culture,
Yeah.
and so that was amazing. And then we finally had to leave because it was an exchange. So I had to go back to Minnesota,
Uh,
back to the cold. And I'm like, why do
oh my
people live
God.
here? What's going on? And so then I said, I got to get back there. I got to get back there. And so as soon as I graduated, I moved back to Hawaii.
Wow. Oh my
And
God.
then I'm like, okay, I got to get a real job.
Yes.
I have a degree now. I got a job at the big department store. I'm in the management training program. This is awesome. Making $9 an hour, right?
Yes.
Like,
Literally. Yes.
and then I saw like I couldn't afford to live off that. So I would waitress at
Yes.
night, and so at waitressing, I'm making like $25 an hour. I'm like, wait a minute here. I did that for like 7 months. And I'm like, I don't really need to start my lifelong career right now. Abandoned management job, just waitress 5 nights a week, make more money,
Yes.
have fun during the day, play tennis, hike, whatever.
Oh
Like,
my God. Literally me. I play tennis.
yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so then, and then I eventually left Hawaii because all like the really cool people I met were from California. So I moved to California and moved to Los Angeles. And that I still had the big hunger to travel. I just kept meeting more and more people and hearing about different adventures. And my friend was a flight attendant. I'm like, I want to be a flight attendant. Unfortunately, I never got hired as a flight attendant, which probably was a good thing because I get motion sickness and stuff. So probably not, probably not the best job for me.
No. You're like both throwing up with the passenger. Yeah, maybe not. That's so funny.
And then, so again, I wasn't ready to settle down and work. I just wanted to work,
exactly.
break, travel, work, break, travel. And then I said, I really want to do that Europe. Like I've never done the backpacking across Europe. And so I sold my car. I had a friend that lived there. I had my 8 boxes of stuff stored at her house. And I'm like, I'm going to Europe. And I didn't worry about I still was in debt because I thought I was going to make all this money waitressing. And I started spending money and I learned about getting in debt. I'm like, wait a minute here. So it wasn't that bad, we had a couple $1,000s. And so I sold everything, went to Europe for 3 months, backpacked by myself, staying in hostels. And that I have a few stories from that.
Yeah.
And then came back, hung out with my parents for 3 months. And then I'm like, where can I live now? I don't have a car. So where do you move? San Francisco, right?
Yes,
no car needed.
Everywhere.
And so then I was in San Francisco, ended up being there for 13 years. And then I moved to Colorado. So
wow. So you haven't traveled hardcore since probably Europe.
Right.
On your vacations.
Yeah. So there hasn't been any good slow travel, but my jobs, I've worked for a couple offshore companies. So my jobs took me to India, into Mexico City, and to Belize. And so I try to hey, I can go there, and then, but once I had kids, I really didn't want to travel, but I did take a couple, shorter trips. The Belize, I went to Belize 3 times. So that was a really cool experience. So the areas what I'm talking about, so North America is one of the, but I'm going to talk about Belize a little bit. And then Oceania, I didn't even realize that was the name of the continent. So that's what I just learned.
I think you just taught me that too.
I thought it was Australia. No, it includes New Zealand, right? And so I had this amazing trip when I was living in Hawaii. I went to New Zealand for 9 days. It was amazing. And then Europe, of course, I have my backpacking trip and just a couple, fun, interesting stories. And then Asia was India, but India blew me away. Oh my God. The craziest place ever. Okay. So should we start with Belize?
Yes.
Okay. So Belize, again, I stayed in the northern part of Belize, this area called Orchid Bay, Belize. And our podcast, we interview Stephen, who has a hotel bed and breakfast in the Orchid Bay, Belize area. And what is really neat about the northern part of Belize is that it's much drier. It rains like crazy in Belize, but it's 200 inches of rain or something down in the south and 50 inches of rain in the north, something like that. Don't quote me exactly, but generally it's much less in the north, and you're really close to Mexico. So you can just hop over to Mexico all the time. You can just drive 3 hours to Tulum, etc. And what a lot of people don't know about Belize, it is an English speaking country. They don't speak Spanish. And so I guess one of the interesting stories is everything is what we take for granted so much here in the US is our infrastructure. And hey, go to Belize, you don't have to pay taxes, right? But the country is in really bad shape because no one pays taxes. But
Oh,
I've heard lately, though, there's been a lot of Taiwanese money have moved in, and now they're starting to get some roads. But when I was there
yeah.
6 to 8 years ago, we, we have to go over there. It's like the Orchid Bay was on this peninsula, and then the road to get there, you have to go over a bridge, but there's no bridge, right? So instead, they have these ferries that can fit 5 cars on them. And the ferry, you roll your car on there, and then the hand crank. And so I took my turn hand cranking just for the experience
I
of it.
love
And
this.
everyone, it takes like 15, 20 minutes to crank this basically the ferry's like tied to this rope. So the ferry just kind of moves across the waterway. And then the cars get off. And then, I mean, it didn't seem like it was that far away, but it must have been too far I mean, it was far. It kind of moved across the football field, right? And then you drive the car off. But sometimes it's like, oh, they're all out to lunch or a tree fell down or something. And you cannot live in these countries if you're on a time schedule. Like if you have meetings, you can't live there. Belize is a good place to do all your editing or writing. Go to write a book or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, a great place for that. And what else is mentioned of Belize is like the wood is so amazing. You think of beach, bright and white, but then you kind of look around. The wood is this really rich, like mahogany wood. What you would think is really expensive here is just everything
everywhere. It's very spiritual. It's very spiritual to them, and that's why they got colonized, was because of the mahogany wood. The British and the Spanish saw that wood and were like, absolutely. So that's a huge reason they got colonized. But it's what's very special to them, the mahogany wood.
Oh, nice.
The Mayans and stuff. So that's so interesting. It's like you're talking about. I got to learn this stuff too.
Yeah, so and cool. So that right, and then we visited the Mayan ruins. That was very cool. But what is also very the food? It was almost like the best food ever. They're like, those chickens run around. That's gonna be our lunch today. I'm like, what? Some vegetarians just like, no. But everything was so fresh, definitely really amazing. And the scuba diving is like world-class scuba diving. The blue hole,
the blue hole
is the largest living reef. We have the Great Barrier Reef over by Australia, but that's dead or mostly dead. So this is the biggest living, and it goes down like forever.
So awesome. This year I want to go to Belize and Mexico. I'm going to make a little trip in the year. That's like personal. I want to do that.
Yeah. Okay. And then kind of into adventurous, like scuba diving. We talk about Australia. So let's talk about Oceania. I went to New Zealand, and I guess the thing that I find was like kind of the craziest is the lack of insurance waivers. Right? So we were there for 9 days, and we got there. I was living in Hawaii at the time, and my sister, she was a professional, total opposite lives. I just never settled down for like 10 years, and she got her corporate job and just stayed at it for like 27 years.
Oh
but
my.
They would send her in all these conferences. One was in New Zealand. So she's like, okay, let's meet up in New Zealand. So in 9 days, we were mainly in the Northern Island. The first day, we actually went sailing. That was really great on a sailboat. And then I think the next day we went horseback riding on the beach. And then we decided to go bungee jumping. And we did it over this river, which was this crazy, I want to say coral blue. And it was so gorgeous. And then we, bungee jumped off. And again, you just like kind of walk up, you pay your thing and you jump, and like, no signing waivers. They're like, whatever, it's more like, just very independent, it's your life.
Exactly.
You take the chances. You can't sue them. We're not in America, right? So
exactly.
And the silliest thing I did is I stepped off instead of like diving falling first. So I jumped off. So feet first, my feet first, and you're tied by your ankles. And so then my head just like swung like crazy back and forth. And I just remember I got off, like I was like so dizzy, like for an hour. I'm like, oh my God, again, because I kind of get like, motion sickness. And like, I'm like, I don't think this is my favorite sport. I don't think I want to do this again. But, I can say I did it. Okay. And then we waited.
I can't believe you did that.
I know. Okay. And then the next day this was pretty cool. Black water cave tubing. Okay. So we're
amazing
in these tubes or, in inner tubes. So you cruise down the river or whatever, but we're in caves, pitch black, can't see anything. Again, no waivers, it's all rocky, and it's like you're in a cave, totally claustrophobic, right? But they gave us like a 15-minute training session to prepare for the sensation where it falls, like the river falls for a little bit. So they want to make sure you're ready for that. And so I'm like, okay. And pitch black. And then it was so cool though. You're sailing, cruising down the river. And then it was all like these luminescent, bugs or
Oh,
creatures in there.
yeah.
So, like you're looking at stars. It was crazy. So it's almost like
Wow.
being been on a Disney ride, right?
Yeah.
But not guaranteed to be safe, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're cruising down, you're looking, and all of a sudden, boom, you fall. So you're like scared, like you hit the rapids a little bit. So that was quite amazing.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah,
That just went on my bucket list. And
yeah.
I don't like feeling claustrophobic, but that just sounds so worth it.
Yeah.
I don't want to do bungee jumping. Like what you just said sounds horrible.
Right.
Being slung around like on a rope. Why is that fun? Did you find it fun at all?
Not really.
Like skydiving, I understand. You're seeing the whole world and you're falling for free. Slinging around like a yo-yo. I don't understand that. But I'm claustrophobic, but I will risk the cave one. That sounds like a dream to me. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was very amazing. And then, but to get a little more adventure, we decided to go scuba diving, right?
Oh, yeah.
So 5,000 feet in the air, like with the airplane door wide open, which is, I'm sure if anyone scuba dive, they know what that's like. But I'm like, oh my gosh, it was tandem, right? So we're putting our lives in someone else's hands. So no training whatsoever. They just kind of tell us what to do. And then, you land kind of hard. So that was like, you had to prepare for that a little bit.
So sorry, you're jumping out of a plane into the water?
No, this is not into the water. No.
Oh, this is skydiving.
This is just skydiving over land.
Oh my God. Sorry. I mixed the two stories. I was like, this is like Bear Grylls stuff. I was like, you're insane. Like, you're awesome. You're literally jumping into the water like a parachuter. Okay. Sorry.
Then we start water skiing.
Like you're literally Bear Grylls. I can't. Oh my God. Okay. So that's your fault. Scuba diving. Okay. No, sorry.
So the next day, so like, okay, I'm finally recovered from motion sickness for the bungee jumping. So now let's go skydive, right? And so that was kind of neat. Again, I've never do it again, but you free fall. Your face is just slammed up with the coldness and the wind, and it was definitely neat. But yeah, not my thing. And so better to do it when I was younger, and could recover faster, versus no, I never did it. Now I'm older and my body might not like it as much. So glad I did it. And so, just do it, And then the last thing we did was just an Auckland walking tour. So we finally went to the southern part, Auckland. And that's what in our European podcast, we learned about in Europe, there's all these like walks that people do, these walkabouts where like learning about the city. And we did that in Auckland. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. We did that walk thing. So it was really cool.
I think you should have started off with that. I feel like you can't do the cave and the bungee and the guide and the horse. I'm like, and then you're like, and now we're going to walk. It's like, I feel like that should have been your first thing. It's anticlimactic in a way. You're like, or was your body like, thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Today, are we just going to walk?
Yeah. But I think that's where the conference eventually was. That's right. So I did it in the timeline. I should be like reversed.
Oh my God. This is such an adrenaline. If you're into adrenaline, like go to New Zealand.
Yes. If you're adrenaline, 100% New Zealand is the place to go. But, this was one of the trips that this is, now as I'm older, like I really want to slow travel. I didn't talk to anyone there. I didn't really meet anyone. Like,
okay,
it was just me and my other friend and my sister. And we just, we check things off, but kind of, we made the most of what New Zealand has to offer and kind of did a lot. I'm sure there's even more crazy stuff to do there.
Not an adrenaline, but I will try the cave thing if I go to New Zealand. And I think that's important when you travel is to have someone who pushes you, either if it's like one of you's not adventurous with food, the other one's not adventurous with talking to people. Someone doesn't want to jump off of a plane and go into the water like that, So like, I'm not an adventurous person, but hopefully I'll travel with someone that'll push me to do that. Cause none of that sounds fun to me.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And I'm so inspired by you. That is incredible.
Yeah.
That sounds like an insane trip.
Right. Yeah. No, it was really, really fun. And then, so now let's go on to Europe. So again, you can make a difference. You can make things happen. You just need to plan. My excuse is, oh, I have credit card debt. I can't go to Europe. Oh, where am I going to put my stuff? I don't want to ship it all to Minnesota. And then I'm going to be stuck in Minnesota when I get back. No, I'm coming back to California. And my plan was to move back to Los Angeles eventually and just stay in San Francisco, and I fell in love and started a family and all that. So never made it back to Los Angeles, but now and in this amazing place, Colorado is awesome.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this trip, since I couldn't be a flight attendant, I'm like, okay, I need to go travel more. So I'm going to get the Eurail. I don't know if there was a limit. I was approaching 27. So it's again, like, oh, that's for 22-year-olds. Like, doesn't matter.
It does not matter.
20, 27, you can do it. And the beauty of traveling alone is you get to meet more people, right? And so my struggle was trying not to hang out with all just the other travelers, but try to meet the people in the country. And I think I did a decent job. And so I started London first. I stayed with the family, and someone at that host family like showed me around a little bit. And then I went to France, stayed at the youth hostel, and I had a budget like $2,000. And this was like 20 plus years ago, $2,000 for 3 months, not very much. So my budget was like $30 a day, very inexpensive back then. But a couple of my really great experiences when I was in Spain, Sevilla is what they call it, Seville, right? And it's just warm and gorgeous and just so colorful. And I remember I was just kept hanging out at this one restaurant, and I start to meet the people that ran the restaurant. And I'm like, do you have any work? So I'm like, how do I work in Europe? Like that I was never able to figure out, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm listening to podcasts and things about people like, oh, in Greece, you can just work forever on the islands because they never have enough workers. And I'm like,
amazing.
I couldn't figure out how to do that. But so in Sevilla, they said, hey, can you help proofread our menu for us? And so I helped correct it for them. And then they invited me to like a local, like the teenage boy was going to a party who's in college or something. Hey, you want to come to our party with us? So I got to go to this party of these local people and keep practicing my Spanish. And so that's what I consider slow travel, travel with intention, really kind of getting the feel of everything.
Yeah.
So that was a really cool experience. And then Cinque Terre, I don't know if you've heard of this. This is in Italy. It's kind of in between the south of France and the south of Italy. Cinque Terre means the 5 towns. And it is amazing. They have talk about these walks, this hike. You hike from town to town to town to town. And I did this. I was budding up with this girl, Elizabeth. I can't remember exactly what her name was. And so we were best friends for, those 2 weeks, right? so like we did that together. And then we kept running into this older couple, right? So their kids were empty nesters. So like in my situation now, and they were talking to us like, how are you doing this? And they were like, just really kind of blown away that we were backpacking, and they invited us. They said, hey, you want to stay at our vacation house? Our kids, our kids were not able to come, and we have all these rooms. We're like, Elizabeth, like, do we do this? Are they going to murder us? Like,
no, that's the beginning of a movie, but I love it.
Right. So we're like, I don't know. Let's just think about it. And then we like walk through one more town with them or whatever. And I go, yeah, I'm like, they seem like good, normal people, right? They were totally Italian. They took us and they let us stay there, and they were so generous. And he's like, what's your budget? And we're like, $2,000. He's like, what? I spent $2,000 1 week here. Like, how do you do this? They thought it was so funny, but they were so nice. We each had our own rooms, I think, even, and then got the meal of a lifetime, right? So like, we're going out to dinner. I'm like, what? I've never like got out to dinner in Italy. And that was the first time I ever had homemade pasta. It's like, what is this? This does not taste like spaghetti. Like, it's like having Wonder Bread versus your mom's fresh bread right out of the oven. Like, that's what it was like. It was so fresh and just flavorful. But I remember the meal was so big. I was like full by the second course. And then the pasta came, and my stomach's really starting to and then the main meal, like the pasta was like the third meal or something. And then it was like duck or something. I'm like, I can't eat. And we're drinking wine then finally. And I was like, I am so full. But it was so amazing and so fresh. And they were just so generous with us. I think we stayed with them 2 or 3 nights, and then, carried on.
Wined and dined.
Wined and dined.
Older couple. I'm obsessed with the story.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Needed that too. Y'all needed to have a luxurious night,
right.
Italians.
Yeah. It's like being on Survivor, and you finally like the merge, right? And you finally get a meal.
I just love how 2 worlds were crossing. We're like, we're going to budget. And then they were like, spending $1,000 on breakfast, and just are both shocked by each other. That's what
right.
I love.
Yes. But so next, I just want to talk about, Poland, just a small little story. We went to,
your dad's from Poland, right? Sorry.
Yeah, my dad's from Poland. Okay. So I got to go to Poland. We went to Krakow. And so somehow I ended up on a train and it went the wrong direction. I just realized as we were moving, like, wait a minute, this is the wrong destination. I'm like, oh, no. And I know a little bit of Polish, like, bring me a beer.
Yes.
And these guys were so nice. The train engineers, it was totally empty. They're like, why are you on this? And I'm like, it's the wrong way. And then they coached me in how to get to the next stop. And basically then I just, turned around and went back. And I think I eventually caught up with my friends, but
I love that.
It was, could be, some people could think, oh my God, that's so scary. But, people are generally, I think, very nice and giving. I think we see too much scary stuff. I think I was on a train with these 3 older men all by myself, scary, but it wasn't. They were super, super nice and super helpful.
People are so nice. Seriously. Like, Americans get so scared to travel because all they do is consume. They consume information. They don't experience. People are literally so nice everywhere you go. And obviously, if you get bad vibes off someone, that's not because their culture or their ethnicity. It's because that's a bad person.
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously, I've loved hearing all your stories. I definitely want you on again. And just before we end the episode, anything you want to talk about with your podcast, Where Next? Where can someone find it? Anything exciting coming up?
Yeah. So Where Next? We're on all the podcasts. We go through Buzzsprout. So if you go to Buzzsprout, Where Next podcast, just Google it. You'll find it in Podchaser, Spotify, etc. We don't really have a website yet. I'm working on that where we can transcribe everything and then add additional articles. So that's what I kind of see a vision on that. And we have coming up. So we have Spain, Italy, and Portugal already recorded. Bali should be coming out. Surfing in Bali is our next one. And we do have our Instagram page at Where Next is the handle on Instagram. That's our primary source of communication. So if anyone wants to be a guest on our podcast, we like interviewing Americans that have spent a long time in those other countries, like our Japan episode. Such an amazing story of this gentleman who was living in Los Angeles, went over to teach English in Japan and ended up staying there. He's like, I just feel so much more welcome and appreciated here. And how it changed his life. So that's a really great episode. Poland is a great episode. I interviewed my cousin who made a life for himself out there. So that's really cool.
I love it. Yeah. Cause you're definitely getting very personal stories from people. Cause I like to cover like the overall view, the big culture, but if you definitely want to get someone's perspective, how their life's been changed, how they moved there, what it's like living there. I feel like definitely y'all should check out Carol's podcast, Where Next. You really get a personal story, which is always the best. Always the best.
Super personal.
So you can check out Where Next on all the platforms. And I just want to say thank you guys for listening. Me and Carol talked about like the podcast before and just how it's just fun to learn about all these cultures. And I'm going to do it either regardless if I have 1 listener or 0 or 1,000.
Right. Yeah. Cause you're doing it for you, right?
I need to learn about the world personally. Like I like to learn, but I also just want to thank all of y'all who just tune in. It's just kind of crazy that there's people and all the way on the other side of the world that's listening. And just thank you guys. And if you want to come on to Carol's show, where can they reach you?
Yeah, best is to DM on Instagram.
Okay. I'm going to share your information in the show notes. If you have a personal story about being in these countries, go on to Carol's podcast. If you want to have suggestions for my podcast or you want to come on and tell a crazy travel story, reach me at culturecultshow@gmail.com or DM my Instagram at culturecultshow. But yeah, it's pretty much it today. I was on the edge of my seat. I could hear you talk all day. And just, thank you again for coming on, Carol. And we will see y'all next time. Cheers.
Cheers.